Welcome to Season 3, Episode 20 of the Nachos and Analysis College Football Show. I'm Drew Archer, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Matthew Johnson. How's it going, Matthew?
It's good. Just got done with a good weekend of a lot of good NFL. Well, not really. There's only one good game in the wild card round of the playoffs, but a lot of good football these last 4 days.
There was a lot of football, which if you're here in the upstate of South Carolina and dealt with snowmageddon or lack thereof, I still use it as an excuse to stay inside and watch every football game.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how much you guys ended up getting. I'm over in Cartersville, Georgia. We ended up getting close to 2 inches, but it was gone by the next afternoon. It had all melted away.
That's pretty much the same way here on Pelham Road in Greenville. It started snowing earlier than it was supposed to, so I was like, oh, maybe we'll get a lot of snow, because originally they were predicting 4 to 6 inches, and that was a big bust. But it was a good weekend to stay inside, stay warm, and watch a lot of football. And you mentioned the NFL. I watched football all day yesterday. Came down to that. How about that doink at the end of the Washington game last night?
That was wild. It's right when I saw it hit the upright, I was like, oh no, this game's going into overtime. And then it still bounces in. What a great end to that game. And me and my friend who I'm staying with right now, we were talking about that game and not sure of how that game was going to end going into it. I was like, I don't know. I think you got to go with the experience of Tampa Bay, but it would be really cool to see Jaden Daniels go on a little playoff run as a rookie. So I think that means they're playing the Lions, though. Next round, the Commanders are. So I think Jaden Daniels' playoff run ends after the wild card round this year.
Yeah, they got a tough divisional round opponent there. But regardless, lots of football, and that includes the playoffs, the college football playoffs, semifinals. So we had Notre Dame, Penn State. Penn State had been just absolute dominating teams and started the game out hot, but Notre Dame comes back and wins 27-24.
Yeah, this was kind of Penn State's game to lose towards the end. Notre Dame had to punt with a minute or so left, and Penn State got the ball back with 2 timeouts. And then on the first or second play of their drive, they threw an interception, and Notre Dame got the ball with 30 seconds left and only had to go about 15 yards to get into Mitch Jeter, former South Carolina kicker's field goal range. So crazy ending, really good football game here. And how good is this playoff for the Northeast or Midwest also too? There's a lot of alcoholics that have had a great weekend.
Yeah, it is going to be a Midwest national championship, just like I've mentioned just about every week. Not a big James Franklin fan, so I was rooting for Notre Dame. One of the few times I root for Notre Dame. Probably be rooting for them in the national championship as well. They'll see Ohio State. Ohio State took care of business against Texas, winning by 2 touchdowns, 28-14.
Texas had a chance to get back in this one late, also similar to Penn State, but they kept turning the ball over too. Ohio State's defense really showing up at the right time, and this matchup is going to be close, but as of right now, the Ohio State-Notre Dame game looks like it's Ohio State's if they just go out and take it.
Yeah, which I don't want them to win, but that is my preseason national championship pick, so it will benefit me in the long run if that's the case, but not a team that I enjoy rooting for. You mentioned the turnover there. Just in general, we were talking about NFL. There's a lot of turnovers. C.J. Stroud threw just as many interceptions this weekend as he did in the entire regular season.
Another quarterback did that too, right? It was Justin Herbert maybe threw...
Or no, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of Justin Herbert.
I was about to say, I know I heard that about one quarterback. I didn't realize that C.J. Stroud also did that. But yeah, I think it was Justin Herbert threw 3 picks all year, threw 4 in the first round.
Yeah.
Who did they play?
They played, they played the Texans.
The Texans, and the Texans came out on top of that one, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But before we get into the rest of the episode, we got to shout out our loyal sponsor, and that is Pump Monkey Septic Service. Owned and operated by Clemson alumni Alan Powell. Give him a call at 864-710-2211. Alan and his team at Pump Monkey service the upstate of South Carolina. So even if you don't necessarily live in Clemson, you might live in Simpsonville, Greer, Pumpkin Town, wherever you live, give them a call at 864-710-2211. Septic issues are not issues that are fun or pleasant to deal with, so give Alan a call to take care of it for you. When the dump's funky, call Pump Monkey.
All right, and that leads us directly into our Clemson offseason updates segment, and not much news this week except early Monday morning, Tiger Illustrated started reporting that Clemson is looking at Tom Allen and Tom Allen only to fill the Wes Goodwin defensive coordinator position. Tom Allen is the current Penn State defensive coordinator and linebacker coach. He's only been there for a year, though. Before that, he was the Indiana head coach and the Indiana DC directly before that. He also has experience as South Florida's DC and playing experience at Indiana. So a big Ten defensive mind there. This season, Penn State ranks 8th nationally in scoring defense. They're only allowing 16.5 points per game, and 7th in total defense, only giving up 294 yards per game. So definitely more like what Clemson is used to in the defensive coordinator department. I'm not too familiar exactly with like what his schemes and stuff are, but definitely promising after his success in Penn State. I believe he can bring that over to Clemson also. But I don't think there's been any new announced returns, new portal entries, or new portal transfers in. Also, I think the staff has stayed pretty together other than the Wes Goodwin firing. So,
and one thing on the staff changes that you're talking about, there was a lot of talks about Coach Reed potentially being not necessarily let go, but relieved of his duties depending on what defensive coordinator they bring in and what position they typically are responsible for coaching. With Tom Allen being a linebackers coach, that likely means that Reed would be hanging around, which he's a great recruiter. I know his responsibility is also with some of the special teams, and that has to be cleaned up, but he recruits well, and his defensive backs historically have performed well too. So on the staff side of things, that's something that could be affected by the Allen hire.
Yeah, I also heard speculation that Mike Reed would potentially look at finding another job elsewhere outside of Clemson if he was not given the defensive coordinator position. I mean, I think he's one of Clemson's longest defensive coaches, so it makes sense to give him a look. And I think he's been pretty successful, especially in recruiting, like you mentioned. But just Clemson's secondary, since he's been here, has continuously improved and been competing at a very high level. So it would be good to keep Mike Reed on staff. Hopefully we can keep him satisfied. With that, we can jump into the Twitter poll.
Twitter polls.
Twitter poll, first one in a couple weeks, because for the first time in a month, I feel healthy and have actually been on Twitter and paying attention to things. So as always, follow us at nachos_analysis on Twitter, where we post this each week when I remember. This week's question was, how are we feeling about the reports of Tom Allen becoming the next defensive coordinator? The options were great hire, solid choice, or wait and see. Didn't get any listener comments because this was one that was thrown up pretty early in the day. Didn't have it up for a full 24 hours like we typically do. But before we reveal the results, what are your early thoughts here, Matthew?
Well, like I said in the offseason updates, I'm not like exactly familiar with Coach Allen's scheme and what he likes to do on defense. So I think I'm in the wait and see category here. Obviously, he took a good team to the playoffs and recruited well at Penn State. Penn State had a lot of defensive athletes, and they were in the top 10 nationally in scoring and total defense this year. So it's probably going to be a good hire, but I think we just got to wait and see. Give him a year or two, kind of like how we gave Wes Goodwin at least a year. I feel like Wes Goodwin's first year was still decent just because he had a lot of leftover from Brent Venables' recruiting, but it'll be interesting for him to get in, see what kind of recruits we can get, maybe use that Midwest pipeline to get some of those players down south.
I'm going to go with a solid choice here, kind of like you. I mean, we've had the luxury of all those years with Brent Venables. I haven't had the need to pay attention to other D coordinators and what's going on around the country. Obviously, solid defenses stand out, but I think he's a solid choice. But we got to see. We got to see where the proof's in the pudding. One thing on staffing, believe that if he does come, he's going to bring his son with him, who's currently a defensive analyst with the Nittany Lions. It's kind of speculated that he would kind of be in that same spot. Also, with letting Wes Goodwin go, and I'm getting all this information from Larry Williams and Tiger Illustrated. If you don't subscribe to them, follow them because they're probably the best in Clemson coverage. But Clemson owes Wes Goodwin $3 million to buy out the rest of his contract. It's believed that Allen's making about $1.5 million annually with 2 years left on his contract. So that could be $6 million worth of buyouts that you are paying just to get him here on top of whatever you end up paying him. So a little bit of a financial position that Clemson's not typically in because you've retained so many people over the last decade and a half. So this is kind of uncharted waters for Clemson. But I'm going to say solid choice here. The way that the polls shook out, 11% of the voters got in and said wait and see. 41% thought solid choice, and 48% of fans think that it is a great hire. So a lot of positive feedback from the Clemson fan base today with the news of Allen possibly becoming Clemson's newest defensive coordinator.
Fact or fiction?
All right, fact or fiction. Fact or fiction. As an 8-point underdog, Notre Dame is being underestimated to win the national championship.
I mean, technically they are, but I'm saying fiction because it's hard to argue against what Ohio State has shown in the playoffs so far. I think this line opened as like a 9.5-point favor for Ohio State, and it's moved down to 8. So I don't think people are overlooking Notre Dame. I think people are just very impressed with what Ohio State has done so far in the playoffs this year. And I mean, it's hard to say that they're going to lose this game at all, or it'll be closer than that right now, just because what they've put on paper has been the best team in college football.
Yeah, I'm going to say fiction. I think Notre Dame is getting a little underestimated. I talked about it in previous weeks. They had that terrible loss week 2 of the season and just quietly just did what they needed to do, kept racking up wins. I think they only had 2 wins this season that were less than a touchdown. They outscored their opponents. They put together a solid season. And then just I can't help but also, I know it's a rivalry game, but I can't help remember the Ohio State-Michigan game. So Notre Dame's a solid team. They're going to put up a fight. Do they win? I don't know. I'd like to think they would cover here in this situation. Fact or fiction, it is now more beneficial for your young quarterbacks to play extra years of college instead of declaring for the NFL draft early.
I'm saying big fact. I actually wrote this one for the listeners, but what spurred this was the Carson Beck news, who had previously announced that he was entering the draft after being Georgia's quarterback this year, but changed his mind and is entering the portal, committing to Miami, which, if the rumors are true, he's been offered a 1-year, $4 million NIL deal to go play quarterback at Miami. If that's real, he's getting paid more than Jaden Daniels, CJ Stroud, every young quarterback, Brock Purdy, all of these quarterbacks in the NFL. He's going to get paid more to have to play against lower competition and probably put himself in a position to make more money the next year by getting drafted higher. He probably was only going to be a late first or early second round pick this year. So I think it's more beneficial if you're going to get these offers that are bigger than a rookie deal is going to be. Why not stay in college and take that money before heading to the league?
Yeah, I think this is going to become more of a trend now that there's more money and legal money now in college football. I don't know if you saw this. A big part of him going to Miami is he dates one of the Caviter twins that's on the women's basketball team there. I think that was a big part of him going there, but it was also funny. The Miami women's basketball team, the day that he committed, posted highlights of his girlfriend and all the assists that she has done this past season, shouting her out for the assist of getting Carson Beck to come to Miami.
That's funny. I didn't know that. I thought I had heard rumors or people talking about his girlfriend, and I know that she was semi-famous, but I didn't know anything about any of that.
Yeah, her and her sister, they're pretty popular on social media for one reason. They're not the best of basketball players. But I'm gonna say fact. I agree with you here. I think it's gonna be beneficial. It's an extra year of development. Financially, it's a much better option, especially if you got 1 year eligibility left and somebody's willing to throw some money at you. So I'm gonna say fact here. Fact or fiction, this year's national championship will cement the Big Ten as the dominant conference in college football over the SEC.
I'm saying fiction because I think I read this on Reddit, and it's a little conspiracy brained, but basically people think that the commissioner of the Big Ten and Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, have been colluding with major media companies to push those two conferences as the premier college football conferences.
They definitely have.
And I think that is going to keep these two at the top of the conversation for a long time. I don't think Big Ten is going to overtake the SEC necessarily, but it's going to be those two. And they're going to be talked about as they're in a league of their own, as if they're not the same 18 to 20-year-old kids from the same high schools that are playing at every other school in like the ACC and Big 12. So, yeah, I think it's fiction, but it's going to be like that for the years to come.
I'm going to say fact for this season. The Big Ten, I think, has had a much better showing this year. Every time an SEC team would step up and get propped up, they'd find a way to lose. I mean, your premier programs this season all pretty much entered the postseason with 2 losses. And the ones that made it to the playoffs, some suffered some embarrassing losses like Tennessee. So I think Big Ten definitely had a better showing this year, and they definitely have something to brag about. It's not just the SEC's world anymore.
Weekly picks.
Time to review our pick'em contest from this past week's semifinal games. Again, there was just 2 games to pick from, so Matthew and I, as always, gave out a favorite underdog over and under, just with 2 games to pick. The way it is shaken out after this round, Matthew got 1 point, moving his record to 42 points on the season with 7 preseason points, so 49 there on the season for Matthew. It was another good weekend for myself with 3 points, moving me to 47 points on the year with 6 preseason points, so 53 there. I don't think there's no possible way for you to come back this week, is there, Matthew?
Nope, it is all over for me. I really needed a big showing last week, and I did not get it, so congratulations to Drew. We're still going to give out picks for this week, but it's more of a ceremonial thing and not necessarily for points or for any type of reason. This is Drew's second year in a row. I believe I won the first year we did it.
By a point.
By
that
1
national
point.
championship screwed me, the TCU Georgia game.
And then 2 in a row now has been Drew. So congrats to Drew. We got to get caught up on our punishment, so we can talk about that coming up soon and plan out probably a Friday or Saturday or something. We can go do both of them probably on the same day. But yeah, bad week for me. Decent season for both of us, though. I believe we both finished the season over 50% on our picks, which is pretty good. You should listen to us.
Yeah, I got to go back and do the math on it and see what our percentage ended up being this year. But I'd say between the 2 of us, the last 2 years, we've been pretty solid. I had a rough start to start the season off this year.
Yeah, I think we're getting better, and next season we might even just go like over 75%.
It works for me and my wallet.
So since we only had 2 games to pick from last week, we kind of just flip-flopped on picks. So the only pick I hit was Notre Dame beating Penn State. Drew's favorite was Ohio State over Texas, and then took the Penn State underdog. So he hit favorite over and under. I only hit on favorite, so rest in peace to my chances and my liver.
All right, so before we give out our picks for this week, a little preview for the national championship. I'm looking forward to Monday. There's a lot going on Monday. It's Martin Luther King Day, Inauguration Day. I get the day off from work, and it's National Championship Day. So big day next Monday. Game will be in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz, 7:30 kick. As Matthew mentioned, that line opened as Ohio State, a 9.5-point favorite, is currently, as of recording on Monday, 8-point spread in favor of Ohio State. This one kind of shocked me. Over under 45.5. A couple stats on these 2 teams as far as against the spread this season. Ohio State 9-6 this season against the spread. Notre Dame 12-2-1 against the spread this season. So Irish covering the spread a lot more. The Buckeyes have beaten their last 3 opponents by a combined 111-52. And another little Big Ten fact here for you. Notre Dame 4-0 against the Big Ten this season, looking to make it 5-0. Notre Dame ranks second nationally with just 14.3 points per game given up. And that defensive unit shined in the playoff, giving up an average of just 17 points per game against three pretty talented offenses. So it's sure to be a good game. I know a lot of people are leaning very heavily on Ohio State, but I'm looking forward to this game.
Yeah, I am too. I think it's going to be a good end to the college football season, and we've been saying it all year, but the parity and just variety that we're getting different teams in the national championship. Ohio State's only second or third appearance in a national championship game in 10 years, and couldn't tell you the last time Notre Dame played for a national championship probably was the early 2000s or something. So
didn't they get curb stomped by Alabama when Matt Teo was there?
yeah, that's right. That was like in 2012 or 2011 or something like that. So I guess that was the last time. So both over 10 years drought in national championships. So with that, we can go ahead and give out our picks for the national championship. And we're just doing a favorite or an underdog and a over or an under, since it's only one game happening. And I am trying to mitigate the bleeding that is coming in the pick'em contest. I am just picking Ohio State -8. Even if they do win, Drew will get 2 points for picking them in the preseason, and I can take one of those away by also getting a point for them winning. So that's my strategy, picking Ohio State there.
I'm going with the win-win philosophy, because if Ohio State wins, I get 2 points. So I'm going with Notre Dame +8 in case they do win, so I still get a point.
Okay, I like that. You're hedging your bets, and I'm kind of doing the same too, because if Ohio State wins and you get that too, it ends up being one if I get a point for it too. So I'm also picking, I was surprised too by the over-under line for this. I'm picking the over. Both of these teams do really have good defenses, but also I think both of these offenses are very talented. It's going to be tough to contain for a full 60 minutes, so I see that over hitting.
I agree with you there. I also went with the over. Like you said, both super talented defenses. I believe it's come out that, like, I don't know how many millions of dollars that Ohio State has spent to assemble this defense this year. But it just seems like in these big games in national championships, like, offenses just take off. If you look back to that Clemson-Alabama matchup in 2018, both super solid offenses, and we ended up seeing 60 points scored. So I'm looking for this to be a little bit more high scoring than people are expecting, considering the talented defenses that both these teams have.
Yeah, I agree.
But that pretty much wraps it up. We got one episode left, Matthew.
Yeah, only one episode next week. We will meet back, review this national championship game, go over any more off-season updates for Clemson, and kind of do a full recap of the Clemson football season and college football season as a whole, just to put a nice little bow on it. And then we won't be back until August.
Yep. Take a little break. But as always, thank you to those of you who listen each week. You make what Matthew and I do a little bit more bearable, rather than just he and I sitting here on a Zoom talking to each other. So shout out to y'all for listening each week and participating in the polls and that sort of thing. So join us one more time next week and we'll talk some ball. Peace.